I've been kind of unsure about whether to post this video or not, mainly because I think I did such a poor job interviewing Paul Riley. But annoyingly, I think some of the things he says are super interesting to listen to, particularly when he starts talking about the state of mind of people who leave Jehovah's Witnesses or about the EXJW community itself. So, without further ado, here is our discussion. Welcome to the channel, Riley. Thanks for joining me. It's good to see you. How have you been?
I've been great, thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me.
No, I'm honoured. You're my first ever interviewee. So if I start sweating or it goes wrong for any reason, that'll be why.
No, I'm sure it'll be fun, and I'm absolutely honoured to be your first interviewee.
Thanks for spending the time.
No.
Maybe for people who don't know you, the small corner of the internet who hasn't seen your channel yet, describe what you do on YouTube. What's your job?
Basically, I raise awareness about the harmful practices of the Jehovah's Witness religion. I debunk some of their doctrine and ideologies, and I also interview people who have come out of the religion and help them to share their experiences.
So from that, your background was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, like myself.
Sorry, I could have led with that.
No, it's my bad interview questions.
Yeah, well, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I usually say that I'm born into the religion. That's not technically true. My mother started studying with witnesses when I was 2 years old, and she got baptized when I was 6. So I'm almost a born-in. So
yeah,
I don't feel
margin
like
of error.
I don't feel like a liar by saying I was born in. So yeah, I was a Jehovah's Witness for 42 years.
Wow.
It ended in April 2019 when I was disfellowshipped, and spent the next almost year and a half still believing that it was the truth, as is referred to internally, the truth,
right?
Finally, which was horrible. It's horrible being physically out but mentally in. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But that all ended when I decided to start researching the religion, and within a very, very short space of time, realized that it was nothing but, it was not the truth at all.
Right.
Nowhere near it. And I think that's when my life started, really.
Take us through that. So your first day of kind of freedom, take us back to that.
Well, the freeness didn't start straight away, to be honest.
Okay.
I think the very first emotion I felt when I realized it wasn't the truth was relief. It was relief that I wasn't going to die at Armageddon. There wasn't a fireball somewhere in the sky with my name on it, just waiting to be released.
Right.
But then that lasted a very, very brief time. Almost immediately after that, I felt fear, a sense of loss, mourning, because literally my whole framework for understanding the world and navigating in it was gone.
Right.
And I just didn't know what to make of anything anymore. I didn't know how to understand the world. I didn't know what my place in it was. I didn't know what my views and opinions were on anything, because those had all been given to me, So it was like, excuse me, starting from scratch. And that was extremely overwhelming and a bit scary as well.
Yeah.
And I also felt a sudden sense of responsibility to my immediate community and the world in general, because we don't have that safety net anymore of Jehovah coming along and just undo, control right on the keyboard, and then just undoing everything that Satan has caused. That option doesn't exist anymore. So I realized that we as a species have to take care of this world and each other, or there's a very, very real possibility of us ending everything.
Yeah. Wow. We really dived into that. Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely.
So I felt a responsibility to contribute in a positive way to the world. Another funny thing that ran through my head was oh my goodness, now I have to worry when Donald Trump does something stupid. Not just him, but everyone.
Yeah, politics in general, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so all of that's going on in your head. Where are you physically? Like, what's your on the ground situation at that point?
Well, at that time, I was in a fairly new relationship. I had lost my family. You know what it's like being disfellowship. You lose your whole support system, all your friends, all your family. I was being shunned by absolutely everyone. I had some really, really good, stellar, so-called worldly friends who had helped me through some very, very tough times. I honestly don't know how I would have gotten through with it, gone through it without them, you know. But my partner, I had, to lean on for support, and she was just phenomenal. She was absolutely phenomenal. And funnily enough, not all the things, not the detail, but the fact that the religion was false and probably a cult wasn't surprising to her at all. I mean, there were things and there were things that she could see and was aware of, but for the sake of respecting my feelings and where I was at, she didn't, voice her opinions on. But when I started to see these things, she was like, yeah, I know. I knew that.
As a witness, you're taught, the separation from the world, and worldly people are different from us, and, there might be some anticipation or fear. Was there any of that for you?
Oh, absolutely. I felt like an alien.
Right.
I literally felt like an alien when I hung out socially with worldly people, not for the first time, but for an extended period of time for the first time. I felt like a complete foreigner. I felt like I felt socially awkward for the first time in my life. I'd never ever thought of myself as being socially awkward or socially stunted in any way at all. I thought I was a very, outgoing, gregarious person, which I was in the witness context.
Mm-hmm.
But being a witness and being in the real world are two completely different things. Absolutely different things. I had to learn a whole new social etiquette. I found out very quickly that I tend to overshare, which I didn't realize that I did.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a real learning curve.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if I think I might have that same tendency. I've wondered if it comes from kind of being a witness. You have to. Well, I felt like I had to kind of explain all of my decisions.
Yes.
So by oversharing, you're always giving your thoughts and feelings to everyone, so that you're kind of protected in a way, because everyone knows what's going through your brain. But in a normal context, it's like, why are you telling me this? I don't know.
Exactly. Also, the fact that not just in Jehovah's Witnesses, but I think in Christian culture in general, there are very few boundaries between people. Everybody's in everybody else's business to an extent. And because there are no boundaries, it's like there's no limit to what you give or expect from people in terms of your own thoughts and feelings, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got this pressure on yourself to do good, to kind of help the community, help the world. All of this is sinking in.
Yeah.
What do you do then? Do you have a plan? Is it too overwhelming? What are your next steps from that kind of situation?
I just take it a day at a time, really. One of the first, I don't know if this is the right phrase, but socially conscious things that I decided to do was to start voting.
Okay.
I registered to vote. I didn't have to do a lot of research on politics because politics was my guilty pleasure as a witness.
Right.
I've been highly interested in politics my entire life, but as an observer, for me, it was like a spectator sport.
And now you're on the track.
Yeah. But I didn't really have to research political ideas and political theory or anything like that. But when it came to voting, I did a lot of research on the candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I was really meticulous in coming up with a framework of how I was going to decide who to vote for.
Okay.
But yeah.
How long did that take?
That took about 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Okay, quite well, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Very speedy. Yeah, for me, it wasn't until I'd fully woken up. That was when I started thinking, oh, actually, all that voting stuff I've got to like look into, and politics, and it's all suddenly, like you say, it suddenly matters all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And yeah, that didn't take 2 weeks. I wish it took 2 weeks. So in that journey, at some point you start YouTubing.
Yes.
And you have, if I haven't plugged it already, a very cool YouTube channel, Jexit2020, which there'll be links in the descriptions, and pop-ups and snazzy animations probably. So why do that? Because I mean, there's lots of people who leave witness life who don't feel that they can or don't want to. What was it that made you think, no, this is something I'm gonna do?
Paying it forward. I felt like I owed a debt, because when I was waking up, I consumed EXJW videos, particularly the ones people telling their story of how they woke up or how they left the organization. I felt a huge responsibility to pay it forward, because I had benefited so much from those stories. I felt the need to tell mine. And when I did, I found it extremely cathartic. It felt like it was doing my mental health a lot of good. So I decided to do another one and another one and another one and another one, and it just became a whole thing.
So was the plan originally just to make one, or make a couple, or just start talking and see where it goes?
Decided on doing a whole channel.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it might be something I'd consider, but after I uploaded that first video, it was by no means a certainty that I would do a second.
Has that turned into a goal, or is it just still every time you're like, okay, I have a desire to help people, I'll make another one?
I do feel that I've made a long-term commitment to do this. I don't think I'll be doing it forever, but I haven't put an end date on it. I think as long as I feel that I have something valuable to contribute, I'll be doing this.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that is, your channel's very good. I think it is valuable to the community.
Thank you.
You mentioned that I think we'll come back to this later, but you mentioned that you consumed a lot of videos in your waking up process.
Yeah.
How is that now? Do you still consume quite a lot of EXJW content, or
not as much? Not as much.
Yeah.
In those early days, I would just search for whatever was out there. I would just put EXJW into the search and then just watch and watch and watch and watch. But now I have a few select channels that I just watch regularly, but I don't necessarily just search for random EXJW content anymore. Once in a while, maybe, but not regularly.
How do you manage making videos that help people against making videos that do a disservice to yourself? And by that, I mean, you have to, when you're making certain videos, keep up with JW terminology, JW thinking, what they're saying, what they're doing, watch their content. And I think that can, or how is that for you? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is it challenging? Do you have to limit yourself? Do you find yourself getting emotional or angry when you're doing that?
No, not really, because I've resolved not to do the type of videos that require me to keep up with what is going on in JW land to that extent.
Interesting.
I don't do rebuttals on the broadcasts or the conventions or anything like that. Besides doing interviews, the videos that I make are basically just debunking certain JW ideas. And it's literally whatever might be affecting me or what might be on my mind at any given time. I'll make a video about it. But by not holding myself to rebutting every new thing that comes out on jw.org, I think that is kind of like a protection
Yeah.
for me, so that I don't have to keep up with their nonsense as much as I otherwise would have to.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you said that was a conscious decision. You were just from the get-go, you were like, no, I don't want that kind of...
It was a conscious decision, but not necessarily right from the very beginning.
Okay.
I think initially it was because I saw other people doing it and doing such a good job. I felt intimidated, and I felt that I would be able to do as good a job as them.
Right.
So I decided to stay away from that area of it. But as time went on, I thought to myself, do you know what? It's probably a protection for me that I don't, And also, as I started growing my confidence in my channel as well, I no longer feel that I would do a bad job of doing those things, but I still prefer not to, for the reasons that I stated, for the effect that it could potentially have on me.
Yeah. And how do you view yourself? Would you say that your channel is an EXJW channel? Is it a kind of Riley channel on your journey? Do you consider yourself part of a community or?
I definitely consider myself part of a community. Definitely.
Okay.
And I love collaborating with other people in this space, like yourself.
You might regret that in half an hour.
Well, I definitely feel, part of a community. I wouldn't say my channel is solely focused on my journey, although there are elements of that. Like I have a video series called my Jexit list, which is
Nice.
my Jexit bucket list, and all the things that I want to achieve now that I can, that I'm not restricted by archaic, religious prohibitions. So there's an element of that, but mostly it's just about helping other people to free their minds of these ideas, that are harmful. They do tangible harm.
So you mentioned that series there. I want to talk about that for a couple of minutes, if that's all right, because I quite like this series, this Jexit list series. So it's all the things that you are doing now that you couldn't have done for one reason or another as a witness, right?
Right, yeah.
And I actually should have checked beforehand. How many are we at now?
9 items on my list, but 5 of them I've actually completed and ticked off as being done.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, you're very speedy with your content. It takes me like 6 months to do anything. With this list, is it something that you're aiming for, or is it something that you're ticking if and when that happens?
No, it's definitely something that I'm aiming for. Definitely something that I'm aiming for. It's a mixture of things. It's things that I feel will be a unique and exciting or fun experience, or things that I feel are essential to my personal growth. Or just things like that. I think the age that I was when I came out of the organization has a lot to do with me doing a list and the kind of things that are on it, because I left the organization when I was 42. So I suddenly realized that my best years were behind me, and I've been living a life of, for want of a better word, restriction or inhibition, because of the rules of the religion, and putting everything off for a future life, because this isn't the real life as we were taught. This is just sort of like a proving ground, and how we live this life determines whether or not we get the real life. Well, coming out of the organization and waking up, I realized, no, this is the real life. And I've got very little of it left, relatively, So I want to make the most of it. I try really, really hard. Sometimes it's difficult, but I try really hard not to think about the years that I've lost.
Yeah.
I try to think about what I've got now and the years that are in front of me and how I can best make use of them.
Yeah.
Whereas if I came out in my 20s, probably in my mind, I would have thought, oh, I've got loads of time. I'm still young, but loads of time to do this and do that and do that.
Interesting.
The mindset of putting things off for the future anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny, this is probably a classic kind of young person mentality, but I think the exact same as you. So I have a friend who came out, who left, the religion in last year, and they are 21.
Oh.
And I was thinking, man, if I had left when I was 21, had all of those extra years, I could you know, have like these kind of youthful experiences, and now I feel like the old fart of the group, and no one gets my references. And do you know what I mean? It's like,
I feel like that regularly. I've got a group of friends who are all 13 to 15 years younger than me, and I definitely feel like the old fart of the group.
And it doesn't help as well. Like, there's certain pockets of culture that I just don't know anything about. Like, they'll make someone said something the other day, and they were like, "Oh, you're such a," I don't even know the word, like Guiba or something. And I was like, "What's that?" And everyone just turned and looked at me like, "You don't know what that is?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Harry Potter." And I was like, "Oh, I wasn't allowed to watch Harry Potter." And they just look at you like you're from some alien planet because it's like the most obvious reference for them. But,
I'll tell you something funny, right? So when I was newly out, it was, what month was this now? This was probably October, November, around about October, November 2019. So I'd only been out a few months. I was in the US with my then girlfriend and a group of her friends. And the two of us, we were the oldest people in the group. Everyone was a minimum of 15 years younger than us. Because like myself, she has a group of friends who are a lot younger than her. And we were in Disneyland, right, in LA.
Cool. Nice.
Fantastic time. We had a great time. But one of the girls in the group called me sir.
Oh, that
sir.
That burns.
She's a grown-ass woman and a doctor. She was a doctor.
Oh, no.
And I'm thinking to myself, somebody 15 years younger than me should be a kid. They should be a grown-ass adult, let alone a doctor.
Yeah, that's...
You're so old.
Yeah, it depends what she says as well. If she's like, "Oh, just come and sit down here, sir," it's like... Take it easy. Ouch.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't had that yet, but I look forward. I'm sure it's incoming. Okay, favorite thing that you've done so far? Best thing on the Jexit list?
Best thing? Oh, definitely marrying a worldly woman.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
that was the best thing, but that's an obvious answer. I'd say after that, easily attending the Pride Parade. That was the best thing.
Was it
the best thing?
Was it last year your first one, the London?
Yes. Last summer. Yeah.
Cool.
And very. Not only was it an absolute blast. I mean, it was so much fun. It was an extremely transformative experience.
Okay.
Extremely transformative experience for me. It changed the way that I see a lot of things, and not just relating to the queer community and the religion's view of homosexuality. Not just that, just a lot of things in general, being less judgmental of people generally, and just being more compassionate and just seeing people as people. At the end of the day, we're all people and we all just want to be happy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's the thing that unites us. No matter what background we're from, what gender or orientation we are, the thing that unites us is that we all just want to, be happy and experience love and friendship and companionship and all of those things. And I think that something that unites people is infinitely more powerful than things that divide people.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I felt that as well. It was my first Pride last year in Brighton. And it was, I was super nervous anyway, just as like a gay man who's never been to Pride. But yeah, there was a moment actually towards the end where everyone was just like, they'd closed off all these streets and everyone was partying and like just, hundreds of people in the streets. And everyone was just having a good time. The music's going. And I was just like, this is, I don't know. I just felt something like kind of, no one really cared. No one was checking that you were obeying the rules. No one was, no one really, in a way, no one cared about you specifically.
Wow.
But it was a kind of, just a celebration and an acceptance, like you say. And that was kind of powerful for me. It was like, wow, this is
this is kind of cool because all these people actually probably live in the city anyway. Like everyone's thinking this anyway. Everyone is like this.
Yeah.
But we're just all celebrating and showing it like today. So yeah, Pride was awesome.
Yeah. It was really, really good. It was really good. I had such a good time. It was so much fun.
Random question that popped into my head. Your friend community now, is there any ex-witnesses there, or is everyone?
Oh, yes. No, there are.
Okay.
There. Yeah. Actually, last weekend I went to my friend's birthday party. He's an ex-witness. We were in the same congregation years ago. It was his 50th birthday party, and oh my goodness, it was such a good time.
I can imagine.
A good time. It's really far from me, so I had to. It was like over 2 hours by train to get there, so I stayed overnight. So as soon as I walked in, I recognized someone else, and it was a lady I used to work with 13 to 14 years ago. We have a mutual friend, and I recognized someone else, and I thought, I never forget faces. I might forget names, but I never forget a face. And all night it was bugging me how I know this guy. Turns out we go to the same gym. But yeah, my friend whose birthday it was, he has a very diverse friend group. There were people of all different ages, different races, different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
It was the kind of group that you'd see at a witness gathering, where it's not immediately obvious how everybody knows each other or how everyone is friends with each other, because they're just all so different. And that made an impression on me to start off with, because we were led to believe that kind of unity only exists in the international brotherhood, but it doesn't. That's a lie.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a really, really good time. Had loads of fun. The music was awesome. I danced until my feet hurt. The next day I was in so much pain. And over the course of the evening, there were several times where I actually got emotional and was close to tears, because everyone was being so nice to me. Everyone was being so nice to each other, that I started to feel really guilty and sad that I used to believe that these people were wicked and deserved to die.
Wow.
And that was a thought that kept on coming back to me over the course of the night, and it really upset me. And there were a few times where I had to just find a corner by myself somewhere, so as not to make a scene.
Yeah.
And there was one point in the evening where I was dancing, and my friend's partner, who I'd never met before this evening, she came up to me and she said to me, "You're an ex-JW as well, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." She's never been a witness, and she asked me how I was and how I was doing, and I told her how I was feeling, and I told her that there were a few times where I was a bit emotional, and she just threw her arms around me and gave me the biggest hug, and it was so heartwarming and comforting, And then later on in the evening, I was sitting on the sofa with my friend whose birthday it was, and we just turned around and looked at each other, and we didn't say a word, but we knew what each other was thinking. And it just, after what seemed like ages, he just said, "There is life after the cult, isn't there?" And I said, "Yeah, definitely." And that was such a powerful moment. It was such a powerful moment.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah. And that was only last weekend. Yeah, so I do have a few ex-JW friends. There are some ex-JW friends that, how do I say this nicely? They're still with me, but they have no desire to cultivate more than an acquaintanceship, if that's a word.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that is because they, on some level, they are still mentally in, and they just view me as an apostate.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. One of the very first lessons I learned after I left is that not everyone who's out of the organization is awake.
Right.
And that was a very hard lesson to learn. I learned that lesson the hard way, because being out, nearly out, at least I did. I kind of thought that everybody knew what I knew about the organization.
Yeah.
I quickly realized that not everyone does. And even if they did, they wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So being physically out and mentally in is horrible. Really, really horrible.
Does that feed like that kind of fire for you for the YouTube? Does that feed back in to be like, I'm making this content for specifically these group of people,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I learned just yesterday that there are still some people who have been out of the organization for years and don't know about the whole UN scandal.
Right.
There are literally people who don't know that.
Yeah.
It's news to them. And this is over a decade old.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, old news.
Old news.
So one of your recent videos was talking about mental health and anxiety. And I wonder if we could just talk about that a little bit. First of all, just generally, do you think for people who, like yourself and myself, who leave a high control group, do you think there's enough signposting for mental health or kind of awareness of where to go and the need to go? Do you think there's ways that we can increase that? What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think that there's room for improvement. There could be a lot more signposting, but I think particularly the need for it as well. That is key, and I don't think that enough people realize how important and beneficial it is. You know, coming out of a group like the Jehovah's Witnesses. Of course, there's no way to do this, but if I could make it mandatory, I would.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
because people that like even when I was leaving, I didn't think. I saw online everyone saying like, do it, you know, just generally, and I thought, oh, I'll give it a shot, but I didn't think that there was any need. But going through it was like, oh, I can see why this is beneficial.
Yeah.
How do you approach improving that then?
I try to talk about it as much as I can, and also sharing my own experience. I've found has been really, really beneficial to a lot of people. At the risk of sounding braggadocious, is that a word? I'm sure it's a word. I'm sure.
I know what you mean. It might be a British thing, so
now
people in the comments will be like going mad, but we understand.
Yeah. Oh, I'll use the JW word, haughty. At the risk of sounding haughty, when you have a public-facing persona from doing YouTube or any other thing that's highly visible, people tend to think that you've got it all together. But that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
So when you share experiences or that show that you don't necessarily have it all together, I think that makes it okay for people who don't have it all together to feel all right about not having it all together.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
100%.
So I think there's always been a stigma around mental health, and I don't see that. I mean, generally, not just in the ex-cult community, just generally in the world, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But the more people talk about it, especially people who have some kind of public profile, it normalizes it, and I think that's only a good thing.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily that like a case of one and done, is it? It's like you might be fine and not have any kind of repercussions mentally, everything's great, and then you have a dip or a blip, and then it goes away, or you have a period of blips. Like it's an ongoing process, I found, at least.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely an ongoing process.
And in kind of, let's say the EXJW community, over the last couple of years, there's been kind of drama and scandals and people abandoning channels and people flocking to new channels, and especially it seems with YouTubers like us, there seems to be a lot of drama. How do you view all of it?
It definitely affects the community, and it has affected my channel as well. I'll explain why in a little bit, but first of all, I want to say I try to stay as far away from drama as I possibly can. Right?
You and me both, yeah.
I've always been like that as a person, you know, very non-confrontational.
Yeah, same.
I'm less non-confrontational now because I don't have these JW rules in my head of always being yielding. And if it's got nothing to do with me, then that just makes it easier and easier. Right. But how it affected me is that I felt very pressured by a lot of people to pick a side. Right? I felt very, very pressured to pick a side. And I think that's not something unique to the EXJW community. I think that's just the way of the world in general these days. The wider world is becoming a lot more cult-like in its perspectives. You're either this or you're that.
Right.
You know, pick a side. If you're not with us, you're against us.
Exactly.
You know, You have to agree with every single thing that your group says, or you're a traitor to the group.
Yeah.
That kind of ideological totalism, which is a term coined by Robert J. Lifton, who wrote a lot of wrote a book about mind control and, thought reform, which was very influential in the field of psychology. But that is just becoming the standard now across the world. I feel the world is becoming a lot more tribal, and that kind of mindset has definitely spilled into the EXJW community, and that is something that I am vehemently against, especially because I'm an EXJW and I hate with a passion dichotomous patterns of thinking, black and white thinking. I hate it. There's nuance in absolutely everything. No one is 100% good and no one is 100% evil. Nothing is 100% wrong and nothing is 100% right. Well, very few things,
Yeah.
There are very few absolutes in the world, and that's what I've come to realize in trying to divest myself of JW thought patterns. I've come to realize that there's a lot of nuance and gray areas in practically everything. So I resist strenuously picking a side on any issue. Not to say that I'm a fence sitter. There are some things where I fall very, very firmly on one side or another, but I just don't like the idea of being forced to be in a group or out of a group with my opinion.
Yeah.
On the dramas that, we're alluding to, I definitely have very, very strong opinions on them, but I don't see the need to, express what they are.
Yeah.
I don't, although I really did feel pressured to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So kind of bringing that into this mental health discussion, how can we limit damage to people who are newly awakening from Jehovah's Witnesses, do you think? Or how do you think about that?
Just trying to be a positive voice. One of the ways that the only way that I did respond to that drama was by doing a video series that was intentionally positively focused. I did a video series on EXJWs who were using their experience to fuel their artistic passions.
Cool.
Because I thought that all my interviews up until that point had just been people rehashing their trauma. I thought to myself, the community could do with some positive stories. So let me do a few interviews with people who are artists. I'm highly envious of artists because I really wish that I had some kind of artistic ability, and I have absolutely none.
Same, yeah.
I'm very, very, I'm full of admiration for people who do, and I envy them strenuously. So I thought, let me, do a few interviews with people who are just, using this negative experience to fuel something positive in their life. And I thought that would have a positive contribution on the community,
Yeah. I guess it's the same kind of approach. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the same kind of approach you take to JW material, in that if I keep bringing this up and keep those kind of either rebuttals or videos constantly talking about that going, it kind of keeps people in a loop almost.
Yeah.
It keeps things, flowing in a way that doesn't seem necessary. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's definitely a need for people to tell their stories and share, their experiences, no matter how traumatic they are.
Yeah.
Because there are still people continuously coming out of the organization who need to see that stuff for a time.
Yeah.
So I don't think that need will ever go away. That there is a place for it.
Yeah.
But you just got to recognize that everyone coming out of the organization is on a journey, and they're all at different points in that journey.
Yeah.
There will be people in the middle, there'll be people at the end, and then there will always be people right at the very beginning.
Okay, and that kind of brings me on to your recent video about anxiety and having an anxiety attack. Again, there'll be a link in description and things. when you're making that kind of content, what's your hope that people get from that?
First of all, to know that it's okay, that the way that they're feeling at the moment is not peculiar to them, that a lot of people are feeling the same way. As human beings, I think we kind of feel better when we're suffering. We kind of feel better that other people are suffering as well. Not in a Schadenfreudian kind of way. Not
nice German.
Not in that kind of malicious kind of way, but it makes you feel like you're not alone. You know, and that gives you some kind of comfort. Yeah. So, firstly, for that reason. Secondly, I want to try and help people by sharing with them the things that I do that help me, and hopefully it might help them too.
What would you say to people who think that talking about it makes new life, all the things that are going to happen to someone leaving the witnesses, all of that seemed scary or some like unsurmountable challenge?
Sometimes life is scary. You can't get away from that. I don't think, as much as I try to be compassionate and cognizant of people's various emotional frailties, I don't believe in wrapping oneself in cotton wool. You know, I do think that there is value in accepting that some things are difficult and some things are scary, and you'll be stronger as a result of facing them.
Were you prepared, do you think, in retrospect, for the toll that waking up would have on your mental health? Or do you think...
No way. I don't have anything that could prepare you for that. There's nothing that could prepare you for that. It's such a roller coaster. And the thing is, it doesn't happen just all at once. There's levels to waking up. Well, at least there was for me.
Yeah.
First, there was the level of waking up where I realized that Jehovah's Witnesses weren't the one true religion, right? There was that. Then there was a stage of, okay, it's not the truth, but they're still better than all the other religions out there, and they keep to the Bible a lot more than more strict adherence to the Bible than other religions. And then there was the waking up to that not being the case. You know, then there's the waking up of realizing that it's a cult.
Yeah.
Like all these different stages, and each one comes with its own unique traumatic experiences and feelings as well. You know, it's not just like, it doesn't happen all at once.
Yeah. It's like the boss at the end of each level.
Yeah. That's a really good way of putting it. You know, when I woke up, I refused to call the religion a cult. I refused to call it a cult. I accepted that it fit the description of what a cult is, but I refused to call it that. Partly because I was fearful of offending current witnesses who I still cared about and respected.
Yeah.
Partly because I guess I still had some kind of, in some way I was carrying a torch for the religion still, you know. But yeah, like I said, you don't wake up all at once. You wake up gradually in stages. It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
It's definitely very cool that you're doing that. So thank you on behalf of the community. I speak for them now. Okay, so we talked about a lot of stuff, but my spiel that I seem to have come up with is this term fresh start. I don't really know if I love it, but we're sticking with it. Because that's what, you do after a cult. It is a fresh start. Everything is new, like we've spoken about. What would be, looking back, your biggest tip or biggest advice that you could give to someone doing that? Whether you're thinking about yourself back in that situation or just generic person X, what's the biggest thing for someone making a fresh start that you think is valuable?
The best advice that I could give is the same advice that was given to me by my wife. Take your time. don't feel pressure to have everything sorted out and figured out all at once. Take your time, because I put myself under a lot of pressure to figure out what I felt about this issue, or what was right or wrong in this circumstance, and all of that, because when I, as a witness, I was very, very self-assured of what was right, what was wrong, why things are the way they are, very opinionated about those kind of things. So going from that to nothing was huge for me. It really, really impacted on me heavily. So I felt like I had to completely replace my worldview. I had to completely replace every single part of that instantly.
Yeah.
But the advice that she gave to me was, you don't have to, just take it a bit at a time.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
Yeah. And that's very, very difficult now when there's so much socio-political upheaval in the world.
Right. Yeah.
And people so freely speak about their views and opinions on such a wide range of issue, whether it's homosexuality, trans rights, abortion. You kind of feel pressured that you have to have a definite opinion about each and every one of those things.
Yeah.
But you don't. It's okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't figured it out yet. It's okay to say that. You're not a bad person for not coming down on one side or another at the moment. That's perfectly fine.
And exactly. And I found in my experience, actually just saying occasionally, depending on the circumstances, look, I was in a cult and they told me what to think, and I just have not had enough time to research or to think about that yet, because I'm trying to find accommodation or work, or I am busy. I don't have an opinion on that yet.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for entertaining me and not giving up on these awful questions.
No. I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been a fantastic interview. Thank you.
No, thanks for being here, and all the best on your channel. And I'm sure I'm going to bump into you imminently anyway.
Yeah, definitely.